could precognitive dreams not be a direct view into the future, but the psyche gaining info telepathically and predicting stuff naturally? Basically, telepathically gaining info and deducing it like a weatherman. One isn't peeking into the future or gaining insight not based on observation. So this is an interesting question, and parapsychologists actually think about this kind of thing a lot. There are multiple, when someone has an apparent precognitive experience, there are multiple possible explanations. So the three classic forms of ESP are telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition. Telepathy is getting information from another mind. So it's mind to mind contact. Clairvoyance is getting information from another place. It's mind to place contact. And precognition is getting information from another time. So it's mind to time contact. And in addition to ESP, there's also PK, or psychokinesis, which is mind interacting with physical systems, mind over matter. It's sometimes put that way. Well, when someone has an apparently precognitive dream, let's say it's the night of September 11th, 2001, and let's say I have a dream about terrorists crashing into the World Trade Center. Now, I actually remember, this wasn't a dream, but I actually remember what I did the night before 9/11. I was at an electronics store in San Diego, and it was Fry's Electronics. And I was there. I was buying some electronics. I don't remember what, but I was there buying some electronics. And this was a popular enough store at the time that they had this huge line, and they direct people to individual tellers. And they had someone at the front of the line who was elevated to see which teller was open, and then they point you towards that one. And so I'm coming up to the front of the line. This is the evening of September 10th. I'm coming up to the front of the line, and the woman is wearing a headscarf, and she's, a little darker complected. So I said, "Hey, where are you from?" And she said, I think she said Yemen. But it was an Arabic speaking country. And so I said, "Salam," just to be friendly, because I knew the word for hello in her language, and I often try to speak a few words of other people's languages to show interest and honor and respect them and their culture. And so I just being friendly said salam, and the next day terrorists plow into the World Trade Center. That was totally not her fault, but I just was struck by the irony of it in my own experience of the situation. Because here I am trying to be friendly to someone from an Arabic speaking country, and not everyone reciprocates. In any event, and that's true of all groups, but in any event, that was my experience. Well, let's suppose it's the evening of September 10th into September 11th, and I have a dream about terrorists plowing airplanes into the World Trade Center, which actually a lot of people had that dream. What could it be? Well, it could be precognition, because that event hadn't happened yet. And so I could be getting that information from tomorrow morning and from another time. On the other hand, the dream also could be telepathy, because the Muslim terror teams already know what they're planning on doing tomorrow morning. So I could establish telepathic contact with them. Now, there are other dreams where I could be getting the information clairvoyantly. And I'll give an illustration. It doesn't have to be a dream. I'll give an illustration of that in just a moment. And then, is there any possibility I could have telekinetically or psychokinetically brought this about? Could I be using my own mind over matter or psychokinesis to cause an effect? Well, actually, parapsychologists think a lot about this. Now, in the case I just named, given that I'm dreaming this on the night of September 10th into September 11th, it looks like it would most plausibly be either precognition or telepathy. But in other situations, it could be any of the four. Let's suppose that we're doing an ESP test. And so you've got a set of what are called Zener cards, although Carl Zener, who invented the cards, didn't really like them being called by his name. So they're also called ESP cards. But these are those cards that have, the 5 shapes: the circle, the cross, the 3 wavy lines, the square, and the star. And so we're doing the test. Let's say I'm the experimenter, so I've got a bunch of Zener cards here that I've randomized, and I look at one. Let's say we're doing a telepathy test. So I pull one up and I look at it, and I see the shape, and I say, "What shape am I looking at?" And you say star, and I turn it around and I say, "You're right, it was a star." Okay, well maybe you got that the way we're trying to test for. Maybe you pulled that information out of my mind, but maybe you didn't. Maybe when I'm looking at the card, instead of pulling the information out of my mind, you gained the information clairvoyantly. You pulled it off the face of the card, and became aware of it that way. You didn't touch my mind at all. You touched the card with your ESP and figured it out from like the hidden face of the card, which is what telepathy is. It's gaining clairvoyance is. It's gaining information about a distant or hidden location, like the hidden face of a card. Or maybe you didn't get the information from the card. Maybe you got it from the future, because remember, I turned the card around and gave you your feedback and says, "Yep, it was a star." Maybe you subconsciously looked into the future to when I turned the card around, and so you got the information precognitively. Or maybe when I randomize the cards, when I'm shuffling them, maybe you're psychokinetically reaching down and affecting how I'm shuffling them, so that it's guaranteed that when I pull a card, it's going to be a star. So all of those are possibilities. And as a result of the difficulty of pulling them apart, parapsychologists often refer to general ESP or GESP when there's no way to clearly distinguish which version of ESP is being used. ESP, you'll recall, is not psychokinesis, but it's telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition. Well, there is a way to force one of those onto the table in an ESP experiment. It is possible to force precognition into play. So even though in the case of the dream that the first other is asking about, it could just be telepathy. There are ways to make precognition happen. And the way you do that in an experimental setting is by not selecting the target until after the person has made their guess. So for example, I say, we're going to do an ESP test. This is going to be a precognitive ESP test. So I haven't shuffled them yet. I don't know what the card is. They are not yet in a determined order, so you can't just look down the stack of cards. But tell me, what's the first card I'm going to draw? And then tell me the second card I'm going to draw, and the third card, and the fourth card, and so forth. Well, the targets have not yet been chosen. I haven't shuffled them yet. And so I don't know the answer of what those cards are going to be. You can't pull that information from my mind. So this is not telepathy, and they're not yet in the order they're going to be in. So you can't just use clairvoyance to go down the stack and see what they all are. So if we're testing ESP here, then you have to get that information from another time. You have to get it from the future. And so it's possible to force precognition into an ESP test. But there's still that fourth possibility, psychokinesis, which is not part of ESP. There remains the possibility that when I go to shuffle the cards, you subconsciously psychokinetically affect how I'm shuffling them, so that they come out in the order they need to come out to fit your guesses. So we can't always distinguish between even though we can force, if this is ESP, it's precognition. We can't always force it to be ESP. It could be psychokinesis instead. But these kind of things are the topics that parapsychologists think about and worry about and argue about and try to design tests that are capable of distinguishing between these different hypotheses. So this is part of the rigor and discipline of doing parapsychology, is thinking through all these options. And before we go, don't forget to like, comment, share the podcast with others, and subscribe. When you subscribe, hit the bell notification so you always get notified whenever I have a new video. Thank you, and God bless you.